Welcome back to our reading through the Bible in 1 year. And this time we come to Genesis 36 through 48. Now remember, like Paul says, study to show thyself a workman who need not be ashamed of himself, rightly dividing the word of truth. And that's what this is all about. I want you to be able to be acquainted with the scriptures and to be able to know the drama and how God's hand leads and guides through the drama of the narrative here in the book of Genesis as we move into Exodus soon. So here's what I want you to be looking for here in Genesis 36 through 48 in this week's reading. Here in chapter 36, we're given the descendants of Esau, and these descendants become what is known the people of Edom. And you're going to find out later it's the people of Edom that will be the enemies of the children of Israel. So they're going to come into play later. Joseph, who is the youngest of the 11 sons of Jacob. Remember now Jacob with Leah and Rachel and their handmaidens had 12 sons. But the youngest one, Benjamin, he's not born yet. So the youngest one at this time is the 11th son, and that's Joseph. And he was indeed the favorite of the father. Matter of fact, you're going to read that he's the one that receives that colored tunic. And that creates real jealousy between the brothers and this youngest of the brothers. And the family is basically turned against him, at least the brothers are, because of a dream. What you have here is that Joseph has this dream, and the dream basically is poetically showing the brothers and the mother and father bowing down to him and really projecting the future. And this is when Joseph's going to rise to the power in Egypt and actually deliver the family from famine. But so prophetically, he has this dream, but in his immaturity, he tells the dream to the brothers and his parents, and that goes over like a pregnant pole vaulter. But the point is this: it didn't help his popularity in that family, especially with the brothers. So the brothers, you're going to read, are going to lay a plot to capture Joseph, and they're going to sell him to a caravan of Ishmaelites who are on their way down to Egypt. And there he's going to be sold. He's sold to a guy named Potiphar. And the brothers then lie to their dad, Jacob, saying that Joseph was torn to pieces by an animal, which is what a horrible thing to do to your father. Again, remember Jacob's family, deception, it just seems to be coming up again and again, lies upon lies. And that's the real danger, is that we influence our children and their children influence their children. And this is what you see illustrated in this area of deception with Jacob and his family. Well, while this is going on in Judah, you have an interesting chapter you're going to see. The fourth son, and that's going to be Judah. He's going to be the one from which the future Messiah is going to come. It says the scepter will not leave the hand of Judah. That means the king. And again, as you will know later, David is from the tribe of Judah. And so Judah is mentioned here as a fourth son. But what's interesting is this chapter is about his moral failure. Long story short, he goes into a prostitute. It ends up to being his daughter-in-law. And morally, he profanes himself, shames himself and his family. What's interesting is in contrast, you're going to see at the same time, here's Joseph, his younger brother, and Joseph has been now sold as a slave down in Egypt, and Potiphar's wife is seducing Joseph. But Joseph is morally pure, unlike his brother Judah, who fell to immorality. Joseph won't. So he flees the situation, but he's still thrown into prison, even though he was innocent, because she was embarrassed because he would not fall to her seduction. Well, they're in prison. God is in control. Joseph meets two imprisoned officials, and they share their dream with him. And the good news is that he correctly interprets the one dream, and the guy's restored to his position. The bad news is he correctly interprets the baker's dream, and he's executed. Well, now later, Pharaoh has a dream that is perplexing him, and then finally he's told he's got a guy in prison named Joseph who interprets dreams. So Joseph is called up, cleaned up, brought before the Pharaoh, and correctly interprets the dream about a coming famine of 7 years, but then what to do to prepare for that famine. And so Joseph is promoted to the second top power in Egypt. so that he would oversee the whole plan. Well, the famine hits up north as well, and so Jacob and his family of about 70 or so folks, well, they're in trouble. They're starving, and they heard that food is available down in Egypt. So Jacob, he sends the sons down there to buy food. When he gets down there, of course, they have to meet with Joseph. Now, Joseph recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. Big surprise. They weren't expecting to find him there. Well, he plays with them, accusing them of stealing and holding on one of the brothers as a hostage and saying, go back to your father, and then when you return, you bring that youngest brother that you say you have. I believe you're lying. And, of course, he's talking about Benjamin. Well, Benjamin, because Joseph was lost and was the favorite of Jacob, Jacob's not excited about letting Benjamin go back down to Egypt. He may lose him as well. But finally he weakens, and with a little more drama, they go down, and Joseph finally reveals himself to the terror of the brothers because they know that he's going to kill him because they had sold him into slavery. But Joseph forgives. That's that famous statement he's going to make that, you know, what you desired for evil, God desired for good. And you see his confidence in the sovereignty and the providence of God. Well, basically, the family comes down to Egypt, and they're saved from the famine. So now we're going to end this section with the family's going to settle in Goshen there in Egypt. And that is until a new Pharaoh is going to come to power. And we don't know much about him, but apparently he wasn't tied to the previous Pharaoh because he's going to turn against them. So before Jacob, now known as Israel, dies, he's going to bless his sons. And this blessing is prophetic, and we'll see that next week in our next week's reading. Now remember, study to show thyself a workman that need not be ashamed of himself, rightly dividing the word of truth. We'll pick up the drama next week.